In the final days of World War II, when Nazi Germany was collapsing under the weight of its own crimes, the Baltic Sea became the stage for one of the most horrifying and forgotten tragedies in modern history: the sinking of the German ship Cap Arcona. The story begins years earlier, in 1927, when the Cap Arcona was launched by the Hamburg-Süd shipping line. It was a grand luxury liner, beautifully built for the route between Hamburg and South America. Its interiors were elegant, its dining halls luxurious, and it stood as a symbol of Germany's pride in engineering and progress. But when the Second World War began in 1939, its destiny changed forever. The ship was seized by the German Navy and turned into a transport vessel and floating barracks. The proud ocean liner of peace had been transformed into a gray ghost of war. By early 1945, Germany was in ruins. The Allies were advancing from all directions, and the Nazi regime was desperate to hide its atrocities. Concentration camps were being evacuated, their prisoners forced on death marches to prevent their liberation. From the Neuengamme concentration camp near Hamburg, thousands of men, women, and children were herded toward the Baltic coast under SS guard. They were told they were being moved for transfer or safety, but the truth was far darker. Orders from the SS leadership, including Heinrich Himmler, stated that no prisoner must fall alive into Allied hands. Many historians believe that the plan was to load prisoners onto ships, sail them into the Baltic, and sink them, erasing all evidence of Nazi crimes before Germany's defeat. By the end of April 1945, the Cap Arcona was anchored in Lübeck Bay alongside two other ships, the Thielbeck and the Deutschland. What had once been a luxury vessel was now a floating concentration camp. Inside its steel hull, over 4,500 prisoners were packed together in suffocating darkness. There was no food, no medicine, no clean air. Disease spread quickly, and the smell of death hung over the decks. SS guards stood above with rifles, ensuring no one escaped. The prisoners came from every corner of Europe: Jews, Russians, Poles, French resistance fighters, and political prisoners from across the continent. Many of them had already survived years of starvation and torture in the camps, only to be brought here for their final hours. On the morning of May 3, 1945, the Baltic Sea was gray and still. Above it, the sound of approaching aircraft grew louder. British Royal Air Force pilots from No. 83 Group had received intelligence that German ships were carrying fleeing SS officers and high-ranking Nazis attempting to escape to Norway. The pilots had no idea that thousands of innocent prisoners were trapped inside those very ships. Acting on their orders, they prepared for a full assault. Around 2:30 in the afternoon, squadrons of Hawker Typhoon fighter bombers swooped down low over Lübeck Bay. Within moments, the sea exploded in fire and thunder. Rockets struck the Thielbeck, ripping her apart. Seconds later, a wave of fire tore through the Cap Arcona. Flames spread rapidly through the decks, feeding on the wooden interiors and fuel. Black smoke billowed into the sky, turning the daylight into night. Inside the ship, chaos erupted. Prisoners screamed and ran, trying desperately to find an exit. Many were trapped behind locked steel doors. Others were crushed in the rush to escape. The decks grew unbearably hot as the fire consumed everything. Some prisoners managed to jump into the freezing Baltic waters, but salvation did not await them. SS guards stationed on the shore opened fire on those trying to swim away. The icy water and gunfire killed almost everyone who tried to survive. Within less than an hour, the great ship rolled to one side, engulfed in flames, and began to sink slowly beneath the black smoke and cold waves. The sea was filled with burning debris, oil, and bodies. By the time silence returned, more than 7,000 people, most of them concentration camp prisoners, had perished in the Cap Arcona and Thielbeck combined. Only a few hundred survived, clinging to pieces of wreckage or rescued by local fishermen. Even among those who made it to shore, many were executed by remaining SS guards before British forces arrived. 2 days later, on May 5th, British troops reached Lübeck, and just 3 days after that, the war in Europe officially ended. But in the Baltic Sea, the final massacre of the Nazi era had already taken place, one that the world would take decades to recognize. In the aftermath, the truth was buried under layers of silence. The Allies were reluctant to admit that the Royal Air Force had unknowingly bombed ships full of concentration camp survivors. The German authorities, on the other hand, were consumed by their own guilt and destruction. For years, official reports simply referred to the incident as an unfortunate accident. Survivors who tried to tell their stories were often ignored, and the tragedy of the Cap Arcona remained hidden in the shadow of the greater war. Today, the rusted remains of the Cap Arcona lie deep beneath the Baltic waters near Neustadt Bay. Memorials now stand along the coast, bearing the names of those who died in the fire and waves. Each year, ceremonies are held to honor their memory, the victims who were killed not by their enemies, but by the confusion of war itself. Historians now recognize the sinking of the Cap Arcona as one of the deadliest maritime disasters in human history, deadlier even than the Titanic, and as one of the last major crimes of the Nazi regime. It serves as a haunting reminder of how war consumes truth, how lies lead to slaughter, and how innocent lives can vanish beneath the tide of chaos. The sea remembers, even when men choose to forget.